51 of the Peace Revolution podcast at peacerevolution.org, wherein our old friend Richard Grove presented a very interesting clip of Peg Luksic called Who Controls Our Children? How Public Schools Dumb Down Kids. And it is a very interesting glimpse into how social engineering takes place at an institutional level, of course, in the context of the education system that Lord Bertrand Russell was talking about at the beginning of this podcast. And in this clip, well, she draws on an analogy from the corporate sales world, surprise, surprise, to talk about how this dumbing down can take place and, in fact, is taking place. So let's listen to this fascinating clip.
When I began the process, I just didn't like the regulations because I thought, well, they're kind of nebulous and they don't make a lot of sense. And when we started investigating, what we found is that the plan is really very organized and very well put together. The plan is to move education away from what we have right now, which is traditional education. That's, you have so many Carnegie units, you had 4 classes of math and 4 classes of English and so many classes of history to graduate, to what is called outcome-based education. Outcome-based education says that the student must demonstrate something in order to meet the goal and be promoted or graduate. In the traditional system, said this is an A, this is a B, this is a C, this is a D, this is an E, and you fit wherever you fit. Now, you had so much time in order to do that, so, you know, you had 180 days, and then the achievement went up or down according to that. In outcome-based education, the theory is everybody gets an A, or everybody gets a B, and however long it takes you to get there is okay. If you can get there in 3 days, then you graduate in 3 days. If it takes you 10 years, then you graduate in 10 years. Everything rides on the goals and on meeting the goals. So instead of saying the schools will teach, the theory now is the student will demonstrate. And so it's a major shift in the way we look at education. In order to understand that, I want you to think of a telephone salesman. Have you ever gotten a telephone call from a telephone salesman? You pick up the phone and the salesman says, hi, he asks you 3 or 4 questions. I'm selling purple shoes tonight, so I want to know, are you a shoe owner? And you say yes or no. And I say, do you like the color purple? And you say yes or no. Do you buy your own shoes, or does your husband buy your shoes, or your wife buy your shoes, or your children buy your shoes, or does some other person buy your shoes for you? And you say yes or no. That's my pre-test. I have just established the baseline data. Now I know where you are, so I can begin teaching you about why you need purple shoes. That's the pretest. Now that I've established that, I'm going to do my sales pitch, and I'm going to give you 10 reasons why you really, really need purple shoes, and you can't live without them, and you want them. That's the curriculum. I have taught you something. I'm done now. Would you like to put that, Mrs. Smith, on your Visa or on your MasterCard? That's the post-test. I am assessing you to see if you have met my goal or not. My goal is that you're going to buy my shoes. You say, put it on my Visa. You have met the goal. I'm going to say thank you very much, and you may graduate from this conversation, and I'm going to hang up. You say, no, you have not met the goal. I am going to say, well, why not? What is your objection? And you're going to tell me, and I am going to remediate you. I'm going to put you through another sales pitch to make you want my purple shoes. That's remediation. You're going to walk that loop with me one more time, and at the end of the remediation, I'm going to say, should I put this on your Visa or your MasterCard? I'm testing you again. That's a reassessment. If you say, yes, you have met the goal, you may graduate from the conversation, and I'm going to hang up. If you say, no, I'm going to say, what is your objection? And I'm going to remediate you again and test you again. Now, if you would stay on the phone indefinitely, I would keep making you walk that remediation loop until you finally said, yes, you're going to buy my shoes, until you meet the goal. However, in a telephone sales call, you can say, excuse me, I've been remediated enough, I'm never meeting your goal, and you can hang up the phone. A child in a classroom cannot hang up the phone. They are going to be remediated again and again and again and again until they meet the goal. That's outcome-based education. Everything rests on the goals. That's the ladder that everything rests on. So when I started getting involved way back in the fall, I looked at the goals, because that's what everything rests on. I thought I'd find geography, history, spelling, reading. I found adaptability to change, ethical judgment, self-esteem, family living, proper environmental attitudes, understanding and appreciating others. And I went and met with Mr. Fear, who's the executive director of the State Board of Education in Pennsylvania, and I said, where did you get these? And with every goal, there was a list of exit outcomes. That's the specific behaviors that the child has to demonstrate in order to prove that they met the goal. The child just can't say, I met the goal, I understand others, isn't that great? The child has a list of behaviors that they have to demonstrate in order to prove that they met the goal. So I said to Mr. Fear, well, where'd you get the goals? And where did you get these exit outcomes? Where did they come from? And he said, oh, we had committees meet all over the state. And we brought together teachers and parents and other groups, and we got together and had consensus forming, and we reevaluated them and redid them, and they came up with over 500 student learning outcomes. And I said, well, okay, what did they base it on? He said, oh, nothing. We developed these specifically for Pennsylvania. I said, well, you mean when they went in and sat down, the table was empty? Oh, no. I said, well, what was on the table? Connecticut's goals. Oh, okay. So I wrote to Connecticut and said to Connecticut, would you please send me your goals? And Connecticut did send me their goals. And I sat down, and Connecticut's goals and Pennsylvania's goals were the same goals. Word for word, the same goals. Since then, we've gotten the goals from 26 different states, and this just gives you a little overview of what some of those exit outcomes are and how close they were. All students understand and appreciate their worth as unique and capable individuals and exhibit self-esteem. That's Pennsylvania's. Connecticut. Each student should be able to appreciate his or her worth as a unique and capable individual and exhibit self-esteem. Does that sound familiar? You can take all the student learning outcomes and match them up. It doesn't matter what state you're in. It doesn't matter whose outcomes you're looking at. If you strip the names of the states, you can't tell whose are whose. Now, the other states, they passed their goals and their exit outcomes on the first go-around. Pennsylvania, because of the involvement of parents like you and me and other ones across the state, have been forced to rewrite their student learning outcomes 7 times now. Some of these are from the first set that was first published in September. They published another set on March the 11th. That set included student learning outcomes that said that our children would exhibit the proper attitudes to live in the American constitutional democracy. We don't have a constitutional democracy. We have a democratic republic. The State Board of Education got the form of government wrong. So I went on the radio in Harrisburg and said the State Board of Education doesn't know what their government is, much less what attitudes you need to live in it. So they rewrote those learning outcomes on March the 12th. That set lasted 24 hours. They're in their 7th rewrite now of student learning outcomes, and really, they haven't changed a bit. They've combined some, they've rearranged some, they've reorganized some, but the exit outcomes are still the same.
Once again, Peg Luksick talking about who controls our children, i.e. the outcome-based system of education that has replaced traditional education over the last several decades. And it is interesting to note, if you go and watch that video, certainly that video is, I'm not exactly sure how old, but I would venture to say at least 30 years old, or at least 20 years old, probably older than that. So this is something that has been demonstrably going on for quite a while now, and is obviously starting to bear fruit in the generation that has been raised in such an education system with these outcome-based models. And it's very interesting that she hinged her example there on the telemarketing example and how a salesman would go through and assign a curriculum for someone to make them understand that they need to buy this company's purple shoes or what have you. Of course, the corporate example is interesting there because certainly the types of manipulations and tricks that can work on a classroom of students are the same that can then be used to go out and sell to those same classroom of students later on in their lives, often without even really them realizing that they are involved in a sales pitch. And of course, that is always the most effective form of sales pitch, isn't it? So this is an extremely important bedrock issue, and just another example of how social engineering can take place on such a mass scale, at such a bedrock institutional level, and can come to really pervade an entire society while while the parents who would otherwise be interested in their children's education and how that's proceeding can be basically just put off to sleep, and no, don't worry about your children's education. The state's taking care of it. Well, we all know where that's leading everyone, unfortunately, and it is towards that technocratic, epistemological, autocratic vision of the future put out by Global Future 2045 and groups like that want to see us all become, or not all become, these cybernetic robots, but of course only the elite few, the supermen who will reach the apotheosis. But I digress. Let's get back to this point. So we have taken a look at one very specific example of the type of social engineering that can take place at an educational, institutional level in order to engineer a crop of students who will be more amenable to whatever really types of sales pitches and things that people want to put on them in the future. Of course, that's not the only outcome of this outcome-based education, but it is one of them, certainly, and I think not coincidentally so. But let's take a look at another, perhaps even more disturbing example of all of this and where it's heading, a much more recent example from our old friend, quote-unquote, Fareed Zakaria of GPS on CNN. And